Welcome to Our Girl Relationships. On this channel, we discuss day-to-day problems people face in their lives. Let's start with the video. When I was 6 years old, both of my parents died in a car accident. Since I barely had any other family members alive and none of them had the ability to foster me in, I had to be put under the care of an orphanage for a while before I was placed into a fostering system and an adoptive one later on. The fostering program required that I stay with a particular family's custody for at least 16 months before they could adopt me. The first family that fostered me ended up being the one that adopted me later on. It was a family of 4, 2 loving parents and a pair of boys that couldn't be separated by the wind. They were the perfect family as known to their friends and family and to me as well for a while. They were extremely kind and treated me like one of their own, or better even, that is of course during the first few months. As soon as the adoption became official, I started to notice a shift in the way I was handled and in my life in general. My adoptive parents became strictly discriminatory against me and started setting me very peculiarly aside from their kids. They would leave me at home, take their boys out for fancy dinners, and bring me the scraps they left over. They would take all of us to the park and leave me in a locked car underneath the burning hot sun while the other 2 had all the fun in the world. They would buy clothes and phones and pay for the boys' hobbies. At the same time, I have been stripped away from everything I expressed any passion about and left aside for housework and chores under the veil of being woman of the house. Months and years passed by and things started to switch from being annoying and blood-boiling discriminatory to harmful and downright abusive. I noticed that I was slowly becoming the punching bag for anyone with a temper or a mundane inconvenience. At the same time, I was never allowed to express anything other than gratitude and itty-bitty happy smiles. The changes were so gradual and over such a long period of time that I didn't pause to question anything about it. I just went through the motions of noticing that I was being treated differently and then being emotional about it for a few days before going back to being an affection-craving puppy that hurled around the family dinner table only to be excluded and told off to eat alone on the floor. Around my 14th birthday, things were becoming unbearable as boundaries were clearly being crossed, and I was starting to see through what was actually going on. Whenever I would dare stand up for myself and question the ethics of what was being done to me, I would be laughed at and shunned down, and my accusations would go under the name of bursts of hormonal outrage, momentarily before being shoved into the basement and kept in the dark overnight as a prank. I was starting to realize that my adoptive dad's anger outbursts were never targeted towards anyone other than me, and never were there any friends or family around the house, and that the mom was never tired and restless when I was around to fulfill her part. I realized that the boys didn't rough each other up as aggressively and savagely as they did me. Every day, I would be more and more convinced that I simply didn't belong with the family and that their intentions were never in the right place. Fast forward to a couple more years, I was now 16, rounding up to 17. I started looking up to my age, my curves were starting to grow, and I was growing more confident each passing day. That's when the abuse really started. I would come home from school every day and dread the cycle of events that was about to take place. The dad would walk past me and make sure to rub me a certain way that no parent should their child. He would make some offensive sexual joke and then get mad at me for not laughing along with him. And the mom would walk in on it, oblivious to the fact that I have nothing to do with it or choosing to ignore the fact and just hail hell upon me. She would assign me with every chore and task there could possibly be in the house. Then she would pick and nag at my clothing choice until I was either too annoyed to do my chores and get unreasonably grounded or too fed up with her comments and wear oversized clothes that made finishing my already impossible tasks all the much harder. I'm not sure what I was waiting for to call it quits, but if memory does me justice, I was waiting to turn 18 so I could legally be independent of that family. That's the only explanation why I went through unbearable things during my last year and chose to fight through them every day. I remember going to a drive-thru with the dad and requesting a dozen chicken nuggets because I was craving them like crazy. I must have had asked on a really bad day or used the wrong tone because before I knew it, I was having my chest barbecued with my dad's massive cigarette straight to the bone. I was in such shock that I didn't get the time to push his hand or scream in pain. I just took it and waited for it to end so the cycle would begin again in 5 more minutes. That day was different though. We were driving past the police station and a friend of Dad's was the sheriff at the time. He stopped us on the way and asked to see papers and legislation. I'm not sure if he did so in the spirit of jokes or noticed my expressions being out of place. I held my hand up to my chest, feeling as the burning was intensified by the necklace swinging by it, and the officer noticed as I tried to comfort the burning pains. "Is that a burning mark?" he said, pointing to his chest, mirroring where I had been burned. "Did your old man do that to you, young girl?" the man asked, half joking, half serious. I shook my head no when the dad was looking and nodded positively when he wasn't looking at me. For a moment, I prayed that it would be the last interaction I would have to suffer from this insane family. "You have no business looking around my daughter's chest, and if there's an old man's inside, it's you, sir," the dad said, joking as he swept through the situation with his charms and good humor. I caught her smoking one of my cigars, and instead of owning up to it like the big girl she is, she tried to push it off by pushing it against her chest. He said, somehow making every single sentence sexual and unpleasant to hear. "Should have known that would never turn anything off." He chuckled with the man across the window while I sat back and hoped the ground would crack up and swallow me dead. Needless to say, the moment the clock hit 12 a.m. on my 18th birthday, I was nowhere to be seen, and I haven't tried reaching out to any of them since. I got a few referred messages from friends and family that I stayed in touch with. They expressed how much they seemed to miss me and how to contact me. Still, I have no intention of reciprocating their sentiments anytime soon. Personally speaking, as someone who grew up in a toxic household and an unloving family, I can relate to what you've been through on a much smaller scale, and I can honestly say that I would have never been able to handle things with such grace since I tend to cope via violence. But I definitely believe that you were wronged in this situation and that each one of those people should have been subject to the consequences of their actions in a court of law. I just got out of a toxic marriage a few months ago. Although it's different from what you've been through, I can testify that the gaslighting and the helplessness despite the desire to change is the worst factor of it all. I hope you're in a better place now, and I want you to know that the world isn't full of people like those monsters, but instead full of fighters like you and me. I work for CPS, Child Protective Services, and I handle testimonies of people who go through things like this for many years without being spotted or believed, and it frustrates me that the system is so rigged and prone to abuse and manipulation. Suppose it helps you sleep any better at night. In that case, hundreds of CPS workers and I are spending all of the time and effort making sure fewer and fewer kids are subject to such crimes, with the hopes one day creating a system that embraces and shelters perfect kids like you with perfect families that they deserve. Next story. My mother-in-law and I had an okay-ish but extremely distant relationship. She's the most self-absorbed person I've ever met, and we're just very different people. I don't think she was happy when her son and I got engaged, but she for the most part stays out of her kids' business. I'm pregnant, which kind of rushed things because I didn't want to be showing at my wedding, and I certainly didn't want to be planning wedding with a newborn, so we decided to push things up. The only date we could get at the venue we really wanted was my in-laws' anniversary, which my husband did not know off the top of his head, and I didn't know until mother-in-law pointed it out. I felt kind of bad because it was her 25th, but I figured it wasn't that big a deal. Mother-in-law has been more distant than usual. When a relative of mine asked me if she was excited to be a grandma, she said, "Kids are okay, I guess." When I asked to see what she was wearing to the wedding, she refused to show me, which I have no idea why because there's nothing wrong with it. During the wedding, someone on my side let us know that mother-in-law was talking bad about us. I guess mother-in-law's sister started it, but mother-in-law chimed in that she would never be close to me because I got married on her anniversary, which ruined it. She still went on a trip and that I'm trash. My husband and I were obviously upset and confronted her. He accused her of being classist, but mother-in-law was very adamant that she called me trash for getting married on her anniversary, not because I come from a lower socioeconomic background. She then extended it to "we are both trash" and listed all of the things she was mad at me about, which consisted of the wedding, trying to approve of her dress, attempting to make fruit tarts with her stolen recipe, and calling her a bad mom for being married to my father-in-law. The last one wasn't even me. It was her other daughter-in-law, which I explained to her. Mother-in-law said she believed me, but it was still trashy to get married on her anniversary and not even approach her and remind her so she can leave early. No hard feelings.
At that point, I said she needed to leave because she had called me trashy 3 separate times. Mother-in-law called me rude and overdramatic, but my husband agreed that it wasn't okay and her and father-in-law left. The last time I saw her, she was really short with me and pretty much ignored me. Father-in-law didn't speak to me, but honestly, he doesn't talk to anyone except mother-in-law and seems to hate us all. Even sister-in-law and brother-in-law, who are pretty normal, feel that I went too far and she was just expressing herself to her sister and didn't mean for me to hear it. You're the a-hole. You had your wedding anniversary on their 25th anniversary, a major milestone, and expected them to be happy about it. What exactly did you expect but resentment and a grudge? Did you really think that it wasn't a big deal that you scheduled your wedding on her 25th wedding anniversary? Even though she approached you about it, of course she was upset and vented to her sister. The person who overheard and told you about this conversation is also the a-hole for stoking drama. But it wasn't original poster's fault. Her husband was the one who booked it on their anniversary as he couldn't remember the date. He was the one who went ahead with it even though mother-in-law found it rude. Mother-in-law specifically blamed original poster when it was original poster's husband who booked it on that date. Original poster told her to leave as mother-in-law was complaining about not being able to leave early, and original poster is the a-hole for letting her leave early. I don't get that part. Yes, it was rude, but mother-in-law should have blamed the one booking the venue, which was original poster's husband, or should have had an adult conversation about it instead of saying it's rude. And whenever original poster tried to talk about it, ignoring her, I'd go with everyone sucks here. You're the a-hole, but more specifically, your husband too. You got married on their 25th anniversary, which you stated that figured it wasn't a big deal. Seriously, it is trashy to marry on a milestone anniversary, and you accuse her of being the most self-absorbed woman. But so are your husband and you, because planning with a wedding any other time, showing while pregnant or with a baby is an inconvenience to you both. A 25th anniversary is a milestone anniversary, along with a 50th anniversary. Your husband and you owe them an apology for ruining a milestone anniversary. Everyone sucks here. 25 years is a big anniversary. Her own son doesn't know when they got married. It was self-absorbed of you to write it off as no big deal. Whoever told you at your wedding was pot stirring because it could have waited until after the wedding, or they could have not told you at all to spare you being upset at your wedding. Mother-in-law may have been talking trash, but you and the guest escalated it at the wedding. Next story. My 30 female, husband 28 male, and I have a 3-year-old daughter with 4C hair. I'm black while my husband and his family are white as paper. Our child is obviously mixed but looks more like me. I recently went back to work, so my mother-in-law takes care of our daughter 3 days a week from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. She has been complaining for a few weeks how hard it is for her to detangle and manage my daughter's hair. I've been teaching her some tips and multiple ways to do it, but I told her that at the end of the day, there's no easy way to do it since her hair is difficult and she's still a child, so she needs to be patient. To note, she doesn't do her hair every day. Before I leave for work, I leave her ready, but sometimes she gives my daughter a bath in the afternoon and says that she doesn't like it when her hair is undone. I've told her that she doesn't need to do complicated hairstyles and that she can always put her hair in a bun or 2 buns, and that looks cute on her, but she told me that she was going to take care of it. Days passed, and yesterday I came home with my daughter having straight hair and found out that my mother-in-law had her permed. Saying that I was mad is not enough. I asked why she did it, and she said that it was easier to take care of now. But I told her that it wasn't her place to do it, and that she was just 3, so perming shouldn't be done at her age. My daughter was also crying because her hair looked ugly, and that she didn't look like mommy or daddy anymore. My husband has light curvy hair. I told my mother-in-law to leave and that my husband and I were going to talk to her very soon. I called my husband and told him to come home ASAP. My baby ran to him crying as soon as she saw him. After I told him what happened and seeing how distressed our daughter was, he agreed with me. Neither of us think that my mother-in-law acted out of racism, but she still did something bad anyway. So we told her she wasn't allowed to see our daughter until she apologized, truly apologized with our daughter. I'm going to take a few days off to see if there's something we can do about her hair and to make sure her scalp doesn't have a reaction to the perm. We also told my mother-in-law that she has to pay for anything that needs to be done to salvage or repair my daughter's hair because she doesn't like how it looks. My mother-in-law is refusing to do any of those things and went to cry to my father-in-law, who is calling us a-holes because she only meant to help us, and accused me of calling her racist for some hair, which I never did. I told my husband that I'm not willing to make her pay for the treatment, but without a serious apology, she isn't welcome back in our home or near our baby.
Not the a-hole.
This was just the first of what would become many occasions your mother-in-law would overstep her boundaries with your family. You're wise to put a stop to it now. Do not let her off the hook. She needs to learn this lesson, or you all are better off without this type of stress. She may have had good intentions, but anyone with a half brain knows you don't chemically treat a 3-year-old's hair. Plus, she did it for her convenience, nor did she ask you or your husband's permission. Absolutely, she needs to apologize to your daughter, you and her son. She crossed a huge boundary. Not the a-hole, and definitely not okay. Those chemicals are so dangerous and should never be used on children, especially by an unlicensed hair care professional. Not that you would ever find someone who values their license to do it to a child, let alone someone who obviously knows nothing about ethnic hair. Does she not realize she could have given your baby chemical burns? Has her hair fallen out and never grown back, possibly blinded her? There are so many no around this whole situation that I would treat it absolutely no different than if she left the baby in the car or put her near the cleaning chemicals cabinet and walked away. And ignorance is not an excuse. I'm not black. There are no family members in my very large family who are black, and I know this. Hell, even my racist grandmother knows this. I was talking to her about a story I heard about another grandmother using a relaxing perm on a 6 or 7-year-old, and even she agreed it was stupid. Perms in general on any child of any race are a bad idea. But on a black child is the holy grail of, oh hell no. That poor little girl's hair might look okay right now, but a week from now when it's breaking off and you will probably have to start cutting it off, then what? I wouldn't allow grandma or grandpa who defended her left unsupervised with the child again, until the child is old enough to tell them no and get away from them if needed. Does she not seriously realize how lucky she is that your little girl isn't in a hospital and she isn't in cuffs for child endangerment right now? Oh my God, if I typed out what I would do to my mother-in-law if that was my child, Reddit would ban me for life. I'm seething on your behalf. I don't think I'd allow her anywhere near me or my child again. She is racist whether you acknowledge it or not. Her idea is that whiteness or straight hair is the norm, and her granddaughter's beautiful hair deviated from the norm, and so she needed to be dealt with. Her and her husband can both go to hell in a handbasket. They're acting as if the imagined accusation of racism is worse than her actual abuse of your child.